Have you ever noticed how some people start to squirm when you finally decide you don't owe the world your every thought and feeling? When you stop trying to prove your goodness, when you no longer feel the need to explain the quiet within you, that's when they begin to show their true discomfort. They shift in their seats when your calm grows stronger than their constant noise. They whisper when they realize you're no longer offering your spirit up for dissection. They speculate and twist stories, not because you've wronged them, but because you've chosen to do right by yourself for once. There comes a point when a person who has fought too many hidden wars and stood alone through endless storms decides enough is enough. You find this sacred ground inside you, a calm so deep that no lie, no rumor, no accusation can shake it loose. And when you stand firm in that peace, it rattles people who only knew how to handle you when you were stumbling over your own apologies. They don't know what to do with a version of you that doesn't flinch. They can't stand that you won't play the game anymore, won't dance for their drama, won't spill your heart just to ease their curiosity. Your silence makes them uncomfortable because it leaves them alone with their own noise. They can't stand that you don't respond to their bait, don't chase after their approval, don't raise your voice to prove you're right. And that bothers them more than anything else ever could, because now they have to face the truth that they never really had power over you. They only had the chaos you handed them willingly. When you stop handing it over, they stand there empty-handed, forced to look at themselves for once. It's not arrogance to guard your peace like it's sacred. It's wisdom. It's survival. Real power doesn't roar for attention or plead for validation. It sits quietly in the room, unbothered by who understands it and who doesn't. That kind of power terrifies those who feed on other people's weaknesses. They never wanted you steady and calm. They wanted you triggered and reactive because that's when they felt strong. When you gave them your tears, your explanations, your constant justifications, they felt big. But when you learned to be still, when you closed the gates and guarded your energy, you exposed how small they really are without your chaos to feed on. So they test you. They toss little stones at your walls to see if they still hold. They tell half-truths, hoping you'll come out swinging so they can say, "See, nothing's changed." But the greatest thing you can do is remain unmoved. Let them test. Let them poke. Let them spin their stories. They will run out of material long before you run out of silence, because your calm is not a performance. It's the reward you earned for surviving battles no one clapped for you in. You learned to hold yourself when no one else did. You built your strength in rooms where you were the only witness to your tears. And that quiet strength frightens people who only feel powerful when you're on your knees explaining why you exist. They hate your calm because they can't locate its source. They can't shake it loose because they didn't help build it. They don't understand how you found it when the world gave you every reason to stay broken and loud. Your stillness is proof that you don't need to shout to be heard, don't need to prove to be valid, don't need to react to be alive. That is the kind of power they can't stand because it leaves them no role to play. The audience is gone, the stage is empty, and you're no longer giving them a show. So guard that peace like the rare treasure it is. Hold it close the way you once held people who only drained you. Let your silence be the loudest thing they hear. Let your unbothered presence be the answer to every rumor they whisper. You don't have to convince them you're okay. Your calm is proof enough. You don't owe them your storms anymore. You don't owe them your explanations, your breakdowns, your constant confessions just to ease their insecurities. The greatest thing you'll ever do for yourself is stand in that holy quiet and know you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be seen to be worthy. You don't need to be understood to know you're whole. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. Let them sit in their own noise while you sit with your soul. Because a person who cannot be provoked, who cannot be baited, who knows how to walk away without slamming doors, and that person is free. And freedom, real freedom, is the one thing people who crave control will never understand. Your peace cost you too much to hand it back for anyone's comfort. Keep it, nurture it, grow it until your calm becomes a forest so deep no chaos can enter without losing its way. That is your victory. That is your power. That is who you are now. Your peace became your power, and and your power found its voice in your silence. When people realize they can no longer read you like an open book, they start trying to write your story for you. That's why they call you cold now, why they say you've changed, as if change is something to be ashamed of. Of course you changed. How could you not? Peace does not come to those who stay the same. Peace is earned when you finally get tired of bending your spirit into shapes that make other people comfortable. You reached a breaking point after years of explaining yourself to people who never really wanted to understand you in the first place. You grew weary of having to defend your pain, justify your boundaries, and explain your distance to people who twisted every word you spoke. So you fell silent. Not because you had nothing left to say, but because you realized your energy deserved better. And in that quiet space, you found a strength they never believed you would find. You discovered you didn't have to shout to be heard, didn't have to beg for validation from people who were committed to withholding it. You learned that your worth was never up for debate in the first place. That kind of self-respect shifts the atmosphere the moment you step into a room. It unsettles the manipulative. It exposes the insecure. Because now you move through life without asking permission to exist. You speak only when your words carry weight. Your presence does what your explanations never could. It makes clear that you no longer belong to their chaos. They can't stand that. They can't stand that your peace no longer includes them. They remember the version of you that used to fold just to keep fake peace. The version that handed out apologies like candy just to stop an argument. The version that allowed subtle disrespect because you mistook it for love. That version was easy to hold, easy to mold, easy to control. But you outgrew that version when you sat in the dark with your pain, when you forgave yourself for the ways you let others misuse your heart, when you made amends with your past and chose to stand up different. You came back quieter, stronger, unwilling to waste another breath defending your choices to people who were never listening. You stopped giving passes to cruelty disguised as jokes. You stopped over-explaining why you need distance, why you say no, why you guard your energy like treasure. That is real peace, the kind that does not tremble when someone tries to test it, and it rattles them, because it shows them they never really had power over you. They only had access. And now that access is gone, they panic, they project. They call you distant, say you've become cold, whisper about how you've changed. But the truth is they're just angry they can't get close enough to twist you up anymore. They never imagined you'd grow past their reach. They never planned for your healing. They counted on your pain to keep the door cracked open. So when you stopped arguing, stopped defending, stopped showing up to the same battles, they scrambled for a new way to get in. They poke, they produced, they stir up rumors, toss shade your way, hoping you'll break character just once and give them the chaos they crave. But you don't, because you know too much now. You know that peace after chaos is not something you ever gamble away. You know protecting your mind and spirit is not selfish. It's necessary. When you've tasted true calm, you refuse to trade it for someone who only loved you when you were in pieces. They say you're cold. They say you're distant. But the truth is, you're free. And freedom looks like coldness to people still chained to their own dysfunction. You don't owe the same cycles another round. You don't owe your mind and heart to people who only show up when they want to drain it dry. That's why your peace bothers them so much. It reminds them they no longer have a seat at your table. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stand up and leave rooms where your worth is up for debate. You are not who you used to be. You have leveled up in places they cannot see and would not understand, even if you tried to explain. Internal peace is the loudest message you will ever send. It says without a single word, I'm no longer available for chaos. It says I have felt calm and I refuse to go back to confusion. And that quiet promise is what shakes them at their core. It terrifies people who made their living off your broken pieces because you're no longer providing any. They have nothing left to grab, nothing left to twist. They see you standing there, whole and still, and it forces them to look at their own storms. They feel it before you say a word. They feel it the moment you walk in, the calm in your eyes, the light in your spirit, the softness that no longer hides pain but holds peace. It makes them uncomfortable because your very being now reflects what they wish they had and what they never thought you'd find. You don't need them to understand. You don't need them to clap for your growth. You don't need them to nod in approval. Your silence says it all. You don't explain. You don't chase. You don't return to the noise. You just keep being. And sometimes just being, fully whole, fully free, is the loudest rebellion you'll ever make. Your peace became your power, and your power found its voice in your silence. When people realize they can no longer read you like an open book, they start trying to write your story for you. That's why they call you cold now. Why they say you've changed, as if change is something to be ashamed of. Of course you changed. How could you not? Peace does not come to those who stay the same. Peace is earned when you finally get tired of bending your spirit into shapes that make other people comfortable. You reached a breaking point after years of explaining yourself to people who never really wanted to understand you in the first place. You grew weary of having to defend your pain, justify your boundaries, and explain your distance to people who twisted every word you spoke. So you fell silent, not because you had nothing left to say, but because you realized your energy deserved better. Most people don't notice the noise they carry inside until they're standing next to someone who carries silence. Your quiet is louder than anything they say because it tells a story they aren't ready to hear. It's the story of someone who used to survive in storms, but refused to let the storms decide who they would become. Your peace whispers that healing is possible, but it also reminds them that healing isn't easy. The truth most won't admit is that staying in familiar pain feels safer than walking the hard road to wholeness. So instead of letting your calm inspire them to rise, they let it provoke them to resist. Instead of learning from how still you've become, they try to disturb what they can't understand. Because it's easier to say you're distant than to look in the mirror and see how stuck they really are. It's simpler to call your quiet strength pride than to face the chaos they keep feeding. Your calm shakes something loose in them because you've become what they pretend to be. You don't need noise to feel alive anymore. You don't need an audience clapping for your every word. You don't need to raise your voice to feel heard. That kind of internal steadiness unsettles those who only know how to live through chaos and conflict. You used to meet them in the middle of their storms, remember? You used to spin in circles trying to explain yourself, defend yourself, prove your love, prove your loyalty, prove your worth, just so they wouldn't feel threatened by your silence. You used to argue when they pressed your buttons. You used to cry when they pushed you too far. But now you move on purpose. Now you don't respond unless the moment truly deserves the precious energy you fought to protect. That shift exposes them. It leaves them standing in the noise they never learned to quiet. They realize their entire language has been drama, and now you don't speak it back. And that scares them. Because when conflict is someone's comfort, peace feels like rejection. They see you as distant when really you're just free. They see you as cold when really you're just done performing. Your stillness becomes a foreign language they never learned, a truth they never faced. It makes them feel small, not because you made them small, but because they built themselves on a foundation of dysfunction, and now they have no idea who they are without it. So instead of reflecting, they reject. Instead of trying to heal themselves, they hate the reflection your calm casts back at them. They want to believe you think you're better, because that's easier than accepting you just grew tired of living in pieces. Some people are so used to war that the sound of peace terrifies them. They built their identity around anger, chaos, confusion, and power games. So when they see someone who can walk away instead of winning an argument, someone who can listen without needing the last word, someone who can stand in love without yelling to be heard, it unsettles their sense of normal. Your peace reminds them that love shouldn't look like tension and punishment and silence used as a weapon. It reminds them that real connection can't survive on who can shout the loudest or cut the deepest. So when you refuse to play the game, when you don't answer the bait, when you don't perform for the chaos anymore, it shakes them because it reveals the truth that they've been choosing the noise. Your peace says they could choose calm too, but they won't. So rather than rise, they reach for you and try to pull you back into the mess. That's when the rumors start. That's when the sly comments slip out. That's when they poke and provoke, desperate to find that old version of you who would bite the hook. But you don't, because you know better now. You know that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's survival. You know what it cost you to find a quiet mind after living in constant chaos. You know what it feels like to rebuild a soul that was drained dry. And you're never going to trade that for someone who only knew how to love you when you were broken enough to need them more than you needed yourself. They say you've changed, and they're right. You have. You chose calm in a world addicted to conflict. You chose rest in a world addicted to stress. You chose yourself in a world that taught you to abandon yourself for approval. They can't celebrate that because your freedom makes their chains rattle too loud. So they talk. They twist your growth into distance. They whisper that you think you're better than everyone else. But the truth is, your peace only exposes what they haven't faced in themselves. You didn't choose calm to look down on anyone. You chose it to stay alive. You chose it because the noise was killing you slowly from the inside out. You chose it because the rooms you used to sit in stole your joy and gave you nothing back. So you left them. You walked away from people who expected everything but gave nothing. You closed the door on patterns that drained you, conversations that never ended, arguments that never brought resolution. And in that space, you created a life that lets your soul breathe, lets your mind rest, lets your heart heal without needing to prove itself every day. People who haven't done that work will always see your peace as rejection. They'll see your boundaries as betrayal. They'll see your quiet as arrogance. But that's not your burden to carry. It's not that you think you're too good for them. It's that you're too free to be pulled back into a prison you already broke out of. And people who choose to live in cages will always resent the ones who found a way to fly. You didn't change to wound anyone. You changed to save the only life you could truly save, your own. But they won't see that, not yet. Not until they're ready to stand still in the middle of their own storms and see what they've been avoiding all along. Your peace is not just a gentle hush. It's a mirror that shows them every wound they buried so deep they forgot it was still bleeding. It reminds them of every pattern they've called normal just because it's familiar. When they look at you now, they see someone who did what they told themselves was impossible. Someone who broke down and got back up, who fell apart and stitched their spirit together in the dark, who faced demons alone and found a way to breathe when the world tried to suffocate them. That reflection hurts when you're still living in survival mode. Your calm presence says there is another life on the other side of the chaos, a different way to wake up in the morning that doesn't taste like dread and bitterness. But not everyone wants that. Some people are more afraid of the quiet than they are of the noise. Some people are so used to the rush of conflict that they cling to it, even when it's the very thing tearing them apart. Your peace says you don't have to live like that. You don't have to hurt just to feel alive. And for some, that truth stings more than the pain they already know. That's why they pull back from you now, why they side-eye your silence, why they wonder what you're really hiding when the only thing you're hiding is the old version of yourself they could control. Your peace doesn't just make them uncomfortable because it's calm, it makes them uncomfortable because it's proof. Proof that healing isn't a pretty idea on paper, but a real thing you can hold in your hands if you're willing to bleed for it. You didn't wake up with it like a gift from the sky. You clawed your way toward it on your knees. You wept through nights no one else saw. You gave up people you loved who loved you wrong. You walked away from rooms where your spirit shrank just to make everyone else comfortable. Your peace is not an act. It's a scar. It's a testament that you went to war with your own pain and didn't come out the same. That shakes people because it forces them to wonder if maybe they could too, if they stopped fighting healing so hard. They remember the old you, The version that said sorry just to keep fake harmony. The one who filled every silence with explanations, excuses, and second chances. Maybe they liked you better when you were cracked open and apologetic for needing anything at all. Maybe your pain made them feel useful, important, needed. But you don't need that anymore. You don't need rescuing. You don't need saving. You don't even need to be understood. That's what they can't grasp. That's what twists inside them when they stand next to your calm. Your peace says you did what they keep saying they'll do one day. Your life is the quiet testimony that you can come through hell and not carry the fire forever. You can live with your scars and not keep reopening them just to prove you've been hurt. You can sit still in rooms where there's no argument to win, no chaos to fix, no one to save but yourself. That terrifies people who define themselves through what they can control. They push you away now. They call you different. They say you're distant. They say you think you're better. But really, deep down, they're just afraid. Your peace doesn't condemn them, but it calls out to the parts of them they refuse to face. It says healing is possible if you're brave enough to stop running. It says freedom is real if you're willing to surrender the drama that's eating you alive. It says you don't have to keep living in the same loop that keeps you small and scared and angry. And that message is too heavy for some to carry, so they reject it. They reject you, they gossip, they twist your calm into arrogance because that's easier than sitting in the quiet of their own choices. They never see the nights you sat alone when your heart felt too heavy to hold. They never see the times you bit your tongue when your anger had every right to roar. They don't see how many times you wanted to crawl back to what was familiar just because it was familiar, even when it hurt. They don't see the prayers, the discipline, the forgiveness you had to pour over yourself like medicine. They don't see that your peace didn't make you perfect. It just made you honest. It taught you that you don't need to perform pain for people to feel loved, that you don't need to hand out explanations like candy to be accepted, that you don't have to earn rest. You can simply choose it. So now you move through rooms softer, clearer, and lighter. You don't rush to prove anything. You don't chase chaos to feel connection. You don't water yourself down just to keep your seat at a table that never fed your soul. Some people will admire that shift. Others will resent it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they're still measuring their value by how loud the world claps when they perform. Your peace is quiet, but it echoes. It echoes into every heart still waiting for permission to stop surviving and start living. And not everyone is ready to listen yet. Your peace becomes a quiet challenge to the systems people cling to for comfort. It doesn't demand attention with loud declarations of victory. It doesn't shout, "Look at me." It sits gently in the room and whispers something far more powerful. Come home to yourself. And that whisper lingers in places they'd rather keep noisy. It settles into the cracks of their excuses and makes them question why they're still chasing peace in things that never gave it to them. It plants a seed that maybe, just maybe, they've been settling for survival when they were made for freedom. That's why your presence is so powerful even when you say nothing at all. You don't need to preach your journey. Your life is the sermon. Your calm spirit says, this is what happens when you stop abandoning yourself for chaos. And not everyone is ready to hear that message because not everyone is ready to do what you did, to stand still in the mess, to stop running, to look in the mirror without filters and face the storms they keep blaming on everyone else. You don't show up to battles that drain your spirit anymore. You don't argue for the sake of proving a point. You don't stand in rooms that twist your heart into shapes that make you small. You walked away from that version of life because you finally understood what true wealth really looks like. You carry it now. Peace of mind. That rare treasure that can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. It has to be earned in the silence, when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when all you have left is your breath and your bruised but beating heart. People who haven't done that work feel it when you walk in. They feel the gap between your calm and their unrest, and they can't explain why it makes them so uncomfortable. Your ability to forgive, to let go, to move on without bitterness doesn't compute for someone who only knows how to feel alive through conflict. They wonder how you can stand there steady when they're still tied to every wound they swore they buried. Some of them see your light and feel hope. Others see it and feel exposed because your peace doesn't just glow, it illuminates all the corners where avoidance has been hiding. Your calm presence doesn't make anyone less. It simply reveals where they've refused to heal. That's the hardest truth of all. Peace doesn't just mean facing your pain. It means facing the choice to stop feeding it. And you made that choice when so many wouldn't. You chose to stop dancing in the chaos. You chose to stop trying to fix people who didn't want to be whole. You chose to stand up for the parts of you that were tired of being sacrificed for someone else's comfort. And that choice rattles people because it means they could choose it too, but they haven't yet. So you keep walking. Not because you think you're better, but because you know you're responsible for the gift you almost died protecting. You know now that healing doesn't look like shouting your truth from rooftops. Sometimes it's choosing silence over reaction. It's breathing deep instead of explaining yourself to people who hear only what serves them. It's saying no without guilt, loving without losing yourself, giving without emptying your soul. Your peace shows up in your words. Your unshakable silence when noise tries to pull you back in. That light you carry exposes what's been hidden. And for some, that's too much to stand near. They distance themselves, they call you distant, they whisper that you think you're above them now. But what they really feel is the echo of your calm in the places they refuse to visit in themselves. They forget that you didn't heal for them to see. You didn't fight to be praised. You did it because you were drowning. You did it because staying broken was not an option anymore. You did it because chaos was costing you your mind, your heart, your future. And when you chose you made peace with paying the price of letting go of anything that demanded you abandon yourself. That's why your calm can't be shaken by gossip. That's why your spirit stays steady when people test your silence, hoping for the old version of you to slip out. You know what it cost to build this fortress of peace. You know you bled for it in empty rooms where no one applauded your discipline, your restraint, your lonely nights of surrender. So now your life testifies without you having to prove a thing. It says healing is not a fantasy. It's not a trend or a feel-good slogan. It's real, and you're standing here as living proof. Your peace is not a weakness to be questioned. It's strength dressed in self-control. It's the result of 100 choices no one will ever fully understand except you and the God who carried you through. It didn't come from making noise. It came from sitting still with your pain until it taught you how to breathe again. And that calm, that freedom, it's why they talk. It's why they project. It's why they push you away when they should be pulling themselves closer to the truth you're living. You don't shrink yourself anymore just to make others comfortable in their familiar chaos. You weren't made to shrink. You were made to rise, to protect the peace you fought for, to walk with your head high and your soul at ease. If your presence makes them restless, let it. If your silence makes them whisper, let them. If your calm exposes what they've buried, that's not your burden to carry. You owe no one your chaos anymore. You owe your spirit the same loyalty you used to give away too freely. So keep your peace sacred. Keep your energy guarded. Keep your boundaries clear. Keep moving with quiet certainty that every step you take in peace leaves a trail for someone else to find their own way out. You're not responsible for how your light makes people feel, but you are responsible for never dimming it again. Stay steady, stay soft, stay strong. The world has enough noise. What it needs are more souls like yours to prove that peace is possible, that healing is real, that freedom can live inside a heart that once believed it was too broken to mend. Thank you for surviving when it would have been easier to give up. Thank you for holding your light when the darkness tried to swallow you whole. Thank you for showing the world that peace is not just an idea. It's a living, breathing truth that walks in the room every time you do. Never let it go. You are the proof that it can be done. And that is more powerful than any noise they could ever make.